If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Tonight's guest is Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Sarah, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, I am a sensitive that has strange experiences lately. I live in Humboldt County, which is a very rural part of Northern California. I am a nurse by education and a healer by birth, and I have 2 grown children, and I think that's about it. I don't really know.
You automatically know off the bat that I'm jealous of you. The fact that you live in Humboldt County, that is a beautiful place. It really is.
It is very beautiful, very special place.
Yeah, that's my kind of country right there. Did you say that you grew up in Humboldt County, or did you move there?
I moved here when I was about 19 years old.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember if we talked about that yesterday when we had that first conversation or not, but yeah, like I said, I'm green with envy because that's my kind of country right there. But coming along with that, a lot of people have gone missing in Humboldt County. Did you know that? Were you aware of that?
Yes, I'm very aware of that. And actually, in Humboldt County, we have twice the missing person rate of the country, the entire country. So people go missing here twice as much as they do in the whole nation.
What do you think's behind that?
Well, I think because we are so rural and a lot of people come from other countries and other places, and they're not aware that this place is not just beautiful. There are other things here too, not just cryptids and vortexes, things like that, but there's people that hide in the wilderness here. It's a good place to hide, unfortunately, for bad people. So there's that part. And also people like to go hiking in ancient forests, but I don't think they understand the risk of that because the ground can actually give out and open up huge crevasses of areas that may have been forest floor at one time, but then are now piled high with debris, let's say 20 feet, and you step in the wrong soft spot on the ground and you could end up in a crevasse, just like as if it was snow. Well, this is just loose dirt and mud.
I can think of a lot of ways to go out, but going out that way, that is one of the last ways I'd want to go out. That would be horrible. But yeah, so many people head into the woods when they're not prepared to do that, especially going out alone. Yeah, it's so easy to think that cryptids are behind most of the disappearances, but I wouldn't be surprised if cases like that top the list.
Yeah, and also I would just mention, unfortunately, that because this is such a rural area and we're kind of known for the marijuana trade and culture up here, but nowadays it's a lot of cartels that have places out there and are legally growing illegally. So, and they are out there with guns and they are not trying to have any witnesses. So I would ask people if they come up here, stay on the trails, go to the places that are parks, that are places that people are supposed to be, and don't go wandering off bushwhacking in virgin country, because oftentimes someone else might be there and you might not want to meet that person, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to meet them. And I can't think of a better place to have a grow. There's so many places out there where people normally just don't go. But then again, you've got people who bushwhack and just go right off trail. I guess it would be pretty easy to stumble into a place like that. That'd be horrible.
Absolutely. And terrifying, actually. And there's also, believe it or not, lots of cannibals in the area. So that is another reason why people go missing around here.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's not good at all either. Like you touched on just a moment ago, you're as sensitive. Now, obviously, you didn't ask to be as sensitive. You were just born that way. But with that in mind, do you see that as an advantage? All the things that come along with being a sensitive? Or, in your opinion, is it a drawback?
That's a good question. Sometimes it is a drawback because you might start feeling something that you don't want to feel, or tune into something that you don't necessarily want to be seeing or experiencing at the time. But for the most part, it's been highly beneficial for me because it's kept me alive and out of places where I don't want to be. It's also opened me up to see things that I'm sure other people haven't seen before in their life. And I've been well protected against it because they can also read my thoughts and my intentions, I believe.
So you think that the reason why you've had all these cryptid encounters is because you are sensitive?
I believe that is part of it, a big part of it, because I am like a person of love and light, and they can sense that within me. And so I think that's why I don't get harmed by it necessarily, knock on wood, I think. And that my intention is always not to harm whatever's there or try to capture it or in any way, shape, or form bother that thing, but just to protect it and hide it and keep it secret and keep people away from it.
Softly admirable you have that mindset, because most people, after having a Dogman encounter or an encounter with any of the things you've bumped into out there, most people would want to just have those things wiped off the face of the earth. So I'm impressed.
Yeah, I couldn't. That's a terrible thought, actually, to wipe all of the things that are magic off the face of the earth. Whether we agree with whatever kind of magic it is, it's here for a reason. And it didn't ask to be brought into the world that way. It just was. It just is that way. So just as we are who we are, we have to respect everything that's here, whether we like it or not. And just leave those things, like live and let live kind of a thing, you know?
Softly admirable you're so open-minded and feel that way. I'm impressed, like I said. Now, we've already established the fact that you think the reason why you've had these cryptid encounters is due to the fact that you're as sensitive, but do you think the cryptids you've bumped into somehow know that you're sensitive?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's possible that they know that I mean, obviously, because when I go out into the woods or wherever I am, I'm always trying to put out a vibration of love and just like protection, like protect whatever's there and not. I don't want to harm it anyway. I try not to be afraid. I try to get rid of all my fear and just put like a childlike wonder feeling in my heart and like an innocence and, like I said, to protect it and keep it secret. You know, I think they can read our thoughts. I think they can read our intentions. I think that they know if we have bad intentions right away. We can't hide those things from them, no matter how hard we try. And it is really important just to really meditate on why you're there and what your intention is with these things. You know, do we just want to see it, or are you trying to do other things, like capture it or harm it? And our consciousness, our whole planetary consciousness, needs to level up a little bit, and we need to try to understand things and not just want to destroy it or have it for our own, be selfish like that. It's really important.
Oh, it is. Now, I'm not going to say it's definitely how things are, but there's a lot of evidence out there pointing to the idea that cryptids can read our minds somehow. And if they can, wow, can you think of a bigger advantage?
That'd be great. I mean, I'm almost positive they can read our intentions and our minds. They are interdimensional creatures anyways, you know, so I don't understand why they wouldn't be able to read our minds and our hearts and really feel our energy, you know, because they are traveling through different energy fields to get to different dimensions anyways. So I think it would be absurd to think that they couldn't in some way read our intentions.
Well, this is just me, but I sure hope they can't read my mind. If they could, they'd say, holy cow, this guy is so freaky, I'm not going to go anywhere near him. They'd say, he's a horror show.
No. They probably enjoy the fact that you're so admirable and have a show dedicated to them.
Well, I hope they would. I hope they look at it that way. It'd be interesting what they thought. If you've had a Dogman encounter that you need help dealing with, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please go to dogmenencounters.com and submit a report. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my 2 Bigfoot podcasts, please go to mybigfootsighting.com. All right, Sarah, please tell us about your Dogman encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, well, what was happening is about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had my little 12-foot tiny trailer parked behind this Valley West shopping center in Arcata, California. And like I said, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was really kind of foggy. It was the late summer, I do believe, and I was just cleaning up the inside of my trailer because I was remodeling it and redoing it, updating it because it was from 1960 or something, and it needed a lot of work. And I was just happened to be looking out my back window when I saw a big, huge dog about 150 feet away walking under the streetlight. And I know a lot of the dogs in the neighborhood, so I was trying to place where I knew this dog from, but it did not look familiar. It was very large. It was about the size of a Great Dane or Presa Canario, but it had the fur of I don't know, like a Benji dog. It was black as night. The light seemed to absorb into its fur, and it was all like messed up and just looked shaggy, like it had been mauled by a pack of wolves just about. Just really messed up hair, and it had the long legs, and it was walking slowly under the streetlight. And I thought, man, whose dog is that? I cannot think of whose dog would be out here by itself at night, all by itself, and it looks like it's been having fun rolling in something. And sure enough, as soon as I had said that, under the streetlight it goes, and it starts to stand up on its hind legs, and I hear snapping and popping and crackling, like as if they were cracking their knuckles and like contorting or something. And it just stands up on its hind legs and rolls its shoulders back, pop, pop. I hear the pop, pop of the shoulders go in, and all of a sudden I realized it's a man's body with a dog's head, still black as night. You can see its gray skin of its chest, and it was ripped. You could see every single muscle and rib definition on its chest under the streetlight. And at this point, I gasped, like, well, it heard me, and it looked right in my direction. And I just froze, and I held my breath. And there we are, staring at each other. And it stood there for about 3 to 5 seconds, just staring at me. And I just held my breath thinking, oh, why did you have to make a sound? What were you thinking? Oh my gosh. So I just stood there holding my breath. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. And then it took 2 huge leaping steps in the direction it was going, which was east. Huge. I mean, there's no way you could outrun this thing. It took the biggest steps I've ever seen anything take, probably like 10 to 12 foot stride. And on the 3rd step, it cleared a 6-foot fence and was off into the dark. And I just stood there in bewilderment thinking, what did I just see? I have no idea what that was. It looked like a werewolf when it was finally standing up like a man. Its face was really long, like a long dog's face, but still matted, messed up hair. Its ears pointed upward. And I didn't really see its hands and feet with too much detail, but it did have long fingers I could see. And I think it had dog's feet. But like I said, I was about 100 feet away from it. And so I just sat there in my trailer thinking that it was going to come back and peel the side of the wall back like a tin can, like a sardine can, and hurt me. But it never did. I mean, in that moment that we were staring at each other, I was thinking to myself, I don't want to hurt you. Please don't hurt me. I don't want to hurt you. Please don't hurt me. What am I looking at? Like, just in awe. So I think that it did, at that moment, read my intentions and hear my thoughts. Like, I don't want to hurt you. What the heck are you? What am I seeing? But I have not seen it since. Now I hear it at night in like about 3 o'clock in the morning every night. You can hear it on the other side of the river from where I stay, howling. It starts to howl. It sounds like almost like a human starting in between a dog and human, a big loud howl, and then all the rest of the dog pack starts chiming in, from regular dog howls to coyote howls and yipping, and then they go running like a pack down the river and into town. And They howl for about 30 minutes all together, all up through town, and then that's it. That's until the next night, and that's pretty much that encounter. It just was momentary, but it felt like a lifetime right there.
Oh, I'm sure it did feel like a lifetime. Now, a lot of eyewitnesses have reported seeing dogmen running with coyote packs on a fairly regular basis, almost like they're best buds. But then, one night, they're watching them run around together, hanging out, and all of a sudden, without any provocation that they could detect, the dogman just turns and kills one of the coyotes that's within reach of it. Have you ever heard any sounds that make you think that maybe the dogman that's running with those coyotes that you've heard, that it might have done that?
That's a good question, because there is one or two times when it seems like there may have been like a fight within them, or one of them might get hurt or killed because maybe there's a ruckus of like a dog fight, and then one dog will start howling sadly. I've heard that maybe twice in the whole time the several years I've been here. So I don't know that it happens regularly or often, but yeah, I would say that probably does happen every once in a while.
Of course, we can't read their minds or think for them, but it really does make you wonder what's behind that. Just like anything else, there's a reason for everything they do. Just wonder what the reason is that makes them just go from being best buds one moment, and then the next moment they're tearing a coyote apart that was right next to it.
Wow, that is really, I don't know, but I do know all behavior has a meaning. Even if we don't understand it, all behavior has a meaning, and it could possibly be a dominance thing to let the other pack know that is the boss, like an alpha thing.
Oh, I'm sure there's no doubt about that amongst the coyotes. Yeah, I'm sure they know that all too well. Now, you said you've been hearing it almost every night running with the coyotes after you had that encounter, but what about before? Did you ever hear it before that encounter?
I used to hear dogs howling, but I never thought anything of it. I thought it was just that the neighbors across the river that had a big old huge dog pack, and then that would cause the coyotes to start howling, and then, all the dogs up and down the river start howling. So I really never thought of anything like that until I saw that dogman.
So it's almost like it's being done for your benefit, in a way.
Perhaps. I will never know.
Had anything happened before that night where you got the impression that something was off? That maybe something was around that wasn't a normal animal?
No, not that. No, not at all. Not at all. I never heard anything. I never seen anything until that particular night when I've seen the dogman, and then, then I was able to open my eyes and see other things around that might not be a little bit normal,
No, I understand. Sometimes people in your situation, they heard things, but they didn't connect the dots. They didn't realize what it was they were hearing. Sometimes they hear it for a long time, for maybe even years. Then all of a sudden they have an encounter, and then they suddenly understand what it was that was making the sounds. But yeah, I mean, like in your case or other eyewitnesses, or just it's something that happens seemingly out of the blue. And then after the encounter, they get this feeling like something's around. So that's why I asked about that. Your encounter happened around 3 a.m., you said, the witching hour. Do you think there's anything to that? You are sensitive, after all. Do you think there is anything to that whole idea about the witching hour?
Well, there is at 3 a.m., it's very quiet. Most people are sleeping. There's not traffic. There's not the noise of people, cell phones, cars, it's very quiet, both odd swirly and frequency wise. So I think that around 3 and 4, the frequencies are so that it allows other things that vibrate on a different frequency level to appear in this dimension with us more easily. We are able to see it more easily rather than during the hustle of a busy day or things of that nature. Witching hour, that is an interesting thing because that is a time when you would want to do magic because it is so quiet and you can meditate and focus and bring your intentions into the light without any interruption or static.
A lot of strange things definitely do happen around that time, so it sure has made me wonder for some time now if there is something to that or not. It really does make you wonder. You told us that its fur was all messed up, almost like it had been attacked by a pack of dogs or something. Did you ever see any wounds on it, or was it just the fur itself that was messed up?
I didn't see any wounds at all. It was just the fur looked so matted, like as if it was greasy, or like if it had some sort of hair product and been spiked out. It was just the weirdest look to it. It was really matted and really messed up, and like it had been rolling in something like mud or grease or something like that.
You weren't exactly on top of it, but you're close enough to get a pretty darn good look at it. With that in mind, what do you think this Dogman was? Do you think it was just a flesh and blood creature or a supernatural being? What do you think about that?
I think that it was a flesh and blood creature. I don't think it was a figment of my imagination or something that wasn't there. I don't think it was a ghost. I don't think it was anything that. It was definitely a flesh and blood creature. It had to navigate this physical realm that we're in right now and run and jump and walk, and it heard me when I gasped, and it stared right at me. We stared at each other for a minute. So I do believe it was here. I do believe it's flesh and blood. And to the fact that I hear it howling at night or in the morning leads me to believe that it is a flesh and blood creature.
Of course, just because it was flesh and blood, that doesn't mean that all dogmen are. Do you think all dogmen are flesh and blood creatures, or do you think some are flesh and blood, some are from the ether?
I believe that when they manifest here in this dimension, they are flesh and blood. They may come from other dimensions as an ether or something else, an energy, a frequency, but when they manifest here, I believe that they are flesh and blood. This dimension we are in here, this realm, is flesh and blood.
That right there is something that gets so mixed up on a regular basis. I really don't know anything about that at all, but I've heard it said where, just like you said, beings can be flesh and blood, but they can still be interdimensional. It's just so hard for me to understand how that could work, but nothing's impossible.
Exactly. It's like in Costa Rica, they have these leprechauns, and they are flesh and blood when they are here in this dimension. However, if you scare or corner a leprechaun in Costa Rica, that thing will turn into water and go into the ground immediately. So it has a way of escaping this dimension by becoming water, which is still quote unquote flesh and blood. It's a liquid matter, maybe not flesh and blood anymore, but it becomes something that is still tactile in this dimension, but then can go and hide in another dimension.
If that's true, it's no wonder they've never been caught. That would explain a lot. When you gasped and it turned and looked at you, did it snap its head like it was surprised, or did it turn its head in a way that gave you the impression that it knew you were there, it just hadn't been looking at you?
Oh no, it snapped its head in my direction. It had no idea I was watching it. It was startled just as much as I was, probably.
You said it was startled. You said almost in a way the first time we spoke that you felt sorry for it. Please expand on that for us.
Well, because, okay, I was talking to some friends in the neighborhood, and one of the girls had said that she witnessed some of the good old boys type rednecks around here hunting the Dogman one night on the freeway, and they had their trucks, 4x4s out there with their Casey lights. They all had shotguns and assault rifles, and they were trying to hunt this thing down to kill it. And it made me sad because the Dogman, it didn't ask to be born that way. It didn't come into the world to be a Dogman. It just is. It just came about that way. It just happened that way. We don't ask to be human. We just are born human. When you're born with disabilities, you won't ask for those disabilities. It just is that way. So why people just want to hunt this thing down and kill it is a bit ignorant and selfish, because then why would you want to hunt something down that did not come to be what it is through its own, desires. It is a cryptid that is disappearing off the earth. Obviously, there's not very many. We don't see very many. We see them now and then, just like Oma or Bigfoot. The same thing. Why would you want to capture or kill something that did not ask to be born what it is? We just have to coexist with it. It has just as much right to be here as we do. And if we made a space for it and just live and let live, I think that the attacks would go down probably because people would want to respect its space. They would probably put food out for it or, give it space to travel and not try to get in its path. Or, the Native Americans used to trade with Bigfoot. Bigfoot was a part of their culture. They used to trade food items. The Oma, they called it Oma, would come and help them with work, moving large stones, moving large logs, helping them build things that would take 10 men to do. Oma could do with one. But then there came a day in the late 1700s, early 1800s, where Oma came and said that they would have to go and hide and they would not be able to trade anymore because there was a white terror coming this way that was going to wipe them out. So that just goes to show that they can read intentions and hearts and minds. They know what's going on. And why can't we just let things live and let live? I don't understand why people have a fascination with killing things that they don't know. We are so afraid of the unknown that we shoot first and ask questions later, and that is a terrible way to live.
Well, like I said before, I love your live and let live mentality, but being fair, a lot of these guys have caused a lot of trauma in eyewitnesses. It didn't have to be caused. So I do like your live and let live mentality, but a lot of these guys are far from saints. I mean, they cause traumatic encounters to happen that ruin lives. Now, we don't know what the percentage of dogmen who are out there causing these traumatic encounters to happen would be. I mean, maybe that's just a chip off the iceberg when it comes to these guys. Maybe most of these guys, by far and large, mind their own business and don't traumatize people, but at least some of these guys are far from innocent, so I don't want to...
Yeah. And going along with that is like, where did this trauma come from? A person is responsible for their own emotional state, whether or not you're startled by a dogman and terrorized by it, or whether you happen to be in its home, in its path, whether you want to believe that or not. When you're out in the nature and in the woods and other places, you have to understand that before you were there, that was something else's home for long before you came in there. So you got to try to see it from that point of view too. I mean, I'm not negating anybody's trauma or experience, but we are responsible for our own emotional well-being and state. So there is something, we have to understand that because we are frightened, or there's things that we can't believe we saw because we don't want to believe that it exists. You can't be angry that it does exist. That seems absurd. Why are they so traumatized by the experience? Did something happen, or were they just so frightened that it caused them to get stuck? Did they get some energy stuck somewhere that is difficult to start moving again, to move on and let that be a good lesson to elevate their consciousness rather than stay stuck in a place,
I can understand your mindset on that, Sarah, but it really depends on how emotionally strong the eyewitness is, what happens
Absolutely.
to them when they have their encounter. I mean, your encounter is as tame as a dogman encounter can be, almost. I guess you can have one that's even a little more tame than yours, but I mean, I have spoken with people who have had nightmarish encounters that are just over the top. You talk with a grown man or a grown woman, someone in their 60s, who you can tell, I mean, they're normally emotionally sound as an oak, but they're talking with you and they're shaking like they're sitting on a paint mixer. I mean, they're shaking like, it's like you're talking to a 5-year-old who looked under his bed and came nose to nose with the boogeyman. And when you find out the nature of their encounters, you understand why they're shaking like they are when they're talking to you and crying and almost inconsolable. So yeah, it just depends on the nature of the encounter that these things force upon eyewitnesses. Now, I can understand your point about us invading their territory, invading their homes, which obviously most encounters do happen in the forest or places where forests were recently cut down to build homes. But yeah, I mean, encounters do happen in places where structures have been up for a long, long time. People
Yes.
think that the only places that you're going to have encounters would be going into a forest, especially a big forest. But I mean, encounters do happen well within the city limits of major metropolitan areas. I mean, Dallas, Chicago, Boston, Cleveland, Cincinnati. I can go on and on. I mean, well within the city limits of places like that, where we're talking places that clearly are not, quote unquote, recently their territory that was cut down. So yeah, in most cases, I agree with what you said there, but yeah, there are exceptions where these guys, they just go to lengths to terrorize people, apparently for no reason at all. And for that, I have a big problem. Now, again, I'm not saying they all do that, but for the ones that do, I've got a big problem with that.
I would agree with you. And I would just say that when you are traveling through dimensions, we don't understand how that works. But I believe that you skip time because time, we don't understand time as it happens in space. We see time through our own eyes measured by a clock. But time is fluid. Time is, it can be jumped. It can be, we can time travel. So if you think about it, if we go through dimensions, there's a big chance that you're going to come out in a timeline that is not consistent with the one you were just in. So when it comes to seeing these things, I believe that maybe they are traveling through time as well as space. So at the same time, when they come out into this dimension, perhaps when they are appearing in these metropolitan areas and the city areas, like I saw mine, they are coming from a place that maybe wasn't a metropolitan area or city area where they were, but when they hop through the portal to go where they're going, they come out in a space that is unfamiliar and probably frightening to them at the moment because it is so different from where they have just come from. They don't understand where they are or the technology or the beings that are around them. That is my my thought on that. Just trying to think about where these things come from and where they go when they're not here.
If that's what's behind it, it sure does make you wonder what their home does look like, where they come from. It makes you wonder what's the norm there. I can only imagine.
Absolutely.
I really can. What I really have a problem with when it comes to these guys, and again, back on this whole live and let live idea, it's one thing to be bitter because the habitat that they're using is cut down and is no longer there. That's one thing, but when they do so many malicious things, and malicious, that's the best way to sum it up. They do so many malicious things that aren't against the people, us, who cut down their habitat or anything like that. When you talk with a little boy who watched his dog be slaughtered out there in the backyard by one of these things for no reason, apparently no reason at all, that dog wasn't responsible for its habitat being cut down. And what does that accomplish by it slaughtering that dog, specifically waiting for that little boy to be looking out the back bay window before it does that? I mean, that's just malicious, wanton slaughter. There's no purpose behind that. When you look at things like that being done, that really makes it hard, in my opinion, to look at these guys in that light where, okay, we cut down their habitat and they're trying to get back at us for doing that. If that's how they're going to try to get back at us, they're as bad as we are, in my opinion.
Well, I believe that some of these creatures are brought from a lower level of vibration than we are. They come from a place that doesn't have the light that we have, the spark that we have. They are a darker spark, darker being that is basically a curse upon this land. When our ancestors came over here and started slaughtering all the Native Americans, just outright slaughtering them in horrific, just massacres, that innocent blood that went into the dirt of this land tainted it, and their shaman and their medicine men, they felt they had to curse this place until something was made right, and that slaughter stopped. Well, that slaughter didn't stop until every single Native American on this continent was almost killed, almost every single one. And we think about the Holocaust, and it was a Holocaust on epic proportions for the Native Americans. So to think that something dark and evil or misguided is not going to come out of that is just a fantasy. That is absurd. When you have mega scale, just murder, slaughter, children being chopped up into pieces and burned and cooked and eaten. I mean, some of the stories are absolutely horrific, what people have done to the Native Americans of this continent. You might be able to think about it in that way. Maybe it is a curse of retribution, a curse of revenge, a curse of something to, because there's too much innocent blood on this land for there to be like only good creatures. I mean, when you have that kind of dark evil, then you have to expect that there's going to be something residual left over, something that can manifest itself and get revenge on all the innocent blood that is in this dirt.
Those are some interesting points that you raised, and there are quite a few other people who have studied dogmen who they would basically repeat everything you said as being what's behind them being here, the whole dogman phenomenon. Some people, they get frustrated when I bring this up, but there definitely does seem to be a connection between a lot of dogman sightings and them being around Native American burial grounds. So there just might be some there. That is a really good point, or I should say those are really good points.
Yeah, there's a lot of burial grounds here that we don't know. They are buried deep in the ground. For example, my sister and her friends lived just a few blocks over, and they were digging a garden, and they started finding these huge 3-foot razor clam shells in the figure of an asterisk in the ground, a huge asterisk. And then they would find things like saber-toothed tiger teeth. They took to the university and even had it carbon dated to 5,000 years ago. And these huge razor clams, we don't see them this big today. All these arranged in asterisks on the ground. And I do believe that that was probably a burial ground. And that's how they marked their loved ones' graves, is with these shells and stones and artifacts that they held close to them. And so there is so many places like that have just been bulldozed and cleared and built on over by the people that came here. And it's desecration. That is absolute desecration. So to think that something is not going to try and get retribution for that kind of desecration, you're just fooling yourself, in my opinion.
Oh, it's definitely absolutely shameful that was done. Absolutely deplorable. And yeah, like I said, there just might be something to that. If curses were placed on the land and that was done, especially, yeah, I guess we probably shouldn't be surprised that things like dogmen are popping up. We really shouldn't. Back to talking about that dogman you saw, you described it as having a man's body after it stood up, but it had a dog's head and dog feet. Does that mean that its leg structure looked like canine legs, or did they look more like human legs?
When it stood up and it popped its knees into place, it was more like looking like a human leg, but it still had a bend to it when it was jumping and leaping. So, and even though it looked like a man with a dog's head when it stood up, its legs it was so powerful, and they bent in a way that wasn't necessarily natural for a man's leg to bend when it jumped and ran. So I can't be certain, but I think it is a mix. This one in particular was a mix of a man's and a dog's legs, because it did have the feet of a dog, and its joints were a little bit shorter than a man's, where the knee articulation would be in a human, than a dog. It was a little bit different, and the way it could bend and jump was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. There's no way you could outrun something like that, ever. You could keep up with a car easily, I'm sure.
Oh, I believe it, and they do that. They do that all the time. Now, talking about its thighs, these things, canine-type dogmen, in a lot of cases, their thighs will look like a man's thigh. But where the knee is, that's where things change. Below the knee,
Yeah.
it'll go backwards, and then it'll go into a hock, and then the hock, which is off the ground, goes down to a dog-like foot, a huge dog-like foot. Does that sound like what you saw?
Yeah, that is pretty much what I saw. It was hard to see because that fur of the creature seemed to absorb the light around it. It's so the only thing that shined that I could see the definition of was its chest. I couldn't even see its face. It was all dark and it just absorbed all the light around it. And so its legs, it was hard to really see, but it looked like a man's leg structure at the thigh, like you said. But as it went down to the foot, it looked more and more like a canid style foot and leg because the ankle joint was up in the air and its heel seemed to be up in the air kind of. When it was jumping and running, it was like it was on its tippy toes, which were huge feet.
So it did have hocks then. Yeah, that would explain its speed and ability to jump the way it did. That explains a lot. Yeah, that's one of the funky things about these guys. There are a lot of variants, of course, but some have knees like us. Others, instead of having knees, they have stifled joints, the way a horse or a dog would have. There really isn't any rhyme nor reason to it. That holds true with a lot of things when it comes to dogmen, so I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised. Now, talking about variants, you said it had a dog-like head, but what kind of a dog would you say had a head that resembled this one's most?
The nose and snout and mouth area were elongated, and the best way I can describe it is a werewolf. If you saw a werewolf, except for its mouth and nose were a little bit more boxy when it came out. I can't really think of the exact breed of a dog, but it would be like a German Shepherd with a huge mouth and face. That kind of elongation of the nose and mouth outwards. And then the head was skinnier than a werewolf's when it went up, and its ears were actually upright instead of like to the side, like a wolf or something. It was more like a German Shepherd style head, I'd say.
So just so we're on the same page, it had somewhat of a German Shepherd looking head, but you said it's kind of like a werewolf's head because it looked like a German Shepherd's head with a wild look to it. Is that why you say it looked like a werewolf almost?
Yeah, and the way its face was shaped was different than a shepherd in that the sides of its mouth and its nose were in the same plane when it came out. When it protruded out, it was about 5-6 inches long from its, let's say, eyes. So it had a much more protruding nose and mouth together. It was rather than just being a pointed nose and a thinner mouth, not so wide. It had a very wide mouth that came out with its nose. Kind of like a crocodile mouth almost.
That doesn't paint a pretty picture at all. But nothing about a dogman normally will. You said it had a wide mouth like that, almost like an alligator's. Are you also saying in that its mouth came back further on its head than what you would normally expect for it to do, or did it come back the normal amount as far as the opening of the mouth?
Well, it didn't open its mouth when I saw it. It was so hard to see, like I said, and the light just was absorbed by the thing. So I couldn't really see where its mouth would open, but I'm thinking when I seen it turn and I saw its profile, yeah, its mouth did go back kind of far. It had a big bite. Let's say if it bit you, it would definitely be able to bite your whole arm off. I mean, your whole arm, a whole forearm at the shoulder articulation would fit in this thing's mouth easily.
Yeah, that's not a comforting thought either, but yeah, I believe it. I don't doubt that at all. Now, light was obviously hitting it. You talked about how its fur seemed to absorb the light, but what about its eyes? from what you saw of its eyes when it snapped its head and looked at you, did the eyes on this thing seem to be backlit, or were you seeing what you would expect to be in the way of a reflection in its eyes of that light?
No, I had no reflection in its eyes whatsoever. That's another thing that kind of made me wonder what it was, because it had no reflection in the eyes like that of a cat or a raccoon or a dog. There was no reflection. It was dark where the eyes would be. Completely dark. It, like I said, it absorbed the light around it. It did not have any reflection. The only reflection I could see was the shiny skin on its chest.
I can only imagine the thoughts going through your head when all this was going on. Holy cow.
Yeah, I could have just kicked myself for gasping.
Oh, well, that's natural. You're human, so yeah, you do things like that when you see a Dogman. Were its ears on top of its head or on the sides?
They were on top for the most part that I remember, not on the sides. So that was when it snapped to look at me, its ears went straight up and it looked over at me like kind of like a Great Dane.
So when it turned and looked at you, you said it popped its ears up. It didn't pin them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they went straight up into the air and just honed in on right where I was at, and it just stared in my direction. I couldn't see its eyes or its face at that point because had walked just a little bit out of from underneath the streetlight, and the streetlight was shining on its back, and so I could barely see the reflection of its chest from the other streetlight across the street. But I didn't see any sort of indication of a face at all because the light just seemed to go into it, and not, it just was a darkness. It was like looking into a closet or something.
Oh no, I understand. With a lot of them, their fur does that. Now, a question I'm going to try to make a habit out of asking on a regular basis is, when it turned and looked at you, it wasn't facing you the whole time. Before it turned to look at you, it was facing sideways to you. With that in mind, did its chest look to you like it was wider than deep or deeper than wide, or just about the same, depth as width?
Well, it was very lean. It was a very lean creature. You can see all the definitions of its muscles and of its ribs. It was elongated like that of maybe a bodybuilder. It had very wide shoulders, and then it went tapered down into a slender waist. And but not before you could see its pectoralis muscles. You could see every intercostal muscle and every abdominal muscle. And then the fur took it back over and obscured the light. But you could see every muscle on its chest and abdomen.
Oh, I believe it. Some of them are built. So I do believe it. Now, when it wasn't looking at you, when it wasn't facing you, did you ever see a tail?
Now, when it was walking, I did see a tail, but then as it stood up and ran away, I did not notice a tail. Of course, I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. But no, I didn't notice a tail after it stood up. Not to say that it wasn't there.
Oh, that's understandable. That's not your fault. A little known fact about these guys is when they get aroused, sometimes they'll tuck their tails between their legs and bring it forward up in front. And that might be what happened, and that would explain why you didn't see the tail after it realized you were there.
Now that you mention it, I do believe that's what happened. I do believe that because it seemed like it had tucked its tail when it stood up.
Yeah, it just might have done that. That's something I was explaining to an eyewitness, a couple of days ago. The reports have just been pouring in, and this poor eyewitness watched his cat being killed in the backyard by one of these things. So
that's too bad.
It is. It is. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, you've had other cryptid encounters besides that one with the Dogman. What can you tell us about those experiences?
Well, the one I can think about that's my favorite is the fact that I have encountered little wild men around my camp. When I left, I had just set up a nice tent and laid white carpet in the bottom of it, and we went to the store to go get some drinks, and I had left a bag of Reese's peanut butter cups open on the floor near the back of the tent. And when we returned, something was different. I noticed that there was wrappers everywhere, and there was tiny little feet prints coming from the side, underneath the side of the tent, and little tiny handprints all around where the peanut butter cups were. And there had been something that had unwrapped, carefully unwrapped each of these peanut butter cup wrappers, eaten the peanut butter cup, and then discarded the wrapper and gotten another one. They had left me 2 in the whole bag, but the feet and the hands were so tiny. The feet couldn't have been more than 4 inches long, and the little hands were about 2.5 inches long. And I had been hearing something all around the tent at night, something that's scurrying, like 2 feet, but running so fast. Pap, 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 pap. It was the pattern was so fast, and you couldn't quite catch it, but after I left the peanut butter cups out, I think that it was a good offering because I was able to catch a glimpse of one of these things. And what it was a tiny little wild man. It was hood about 2.5 feet tall. It had crazy wild hair, kind of like the Muppet animal in the Muppets. Its hair was just crazy, spiked out, matted, and it had a little beard and a little mustache, and it ran with the speed of light. I'll tell you, the thing is so fast. It's faster than a rat. It's faster than anything I've ever seen before. And they can go in any space, just about. I mean, these things are, I've never seen anything like it. It was so fast and so hairy. It just looked like a ball of fur flying through the air when I saw it run finally. And I don't think it had any ill intention for me. But then when I first went there to camp, I had just a little talk with the area around it and just spoke out loud, like, I am here. I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to do anything to you. Please don't harm me. I'm here to protect you. Please protect me. I won't let anybody else come here to try and harm you or find you or catch you. So please just let me stay here in peace. And if you should need anything like food or water, there will be some here for you always. I'm always going to share it with you. And so I always left out food and water for it and little treats, candies, things of that sort. But their favorite was definitely the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Sarah, if you make a habit out of leaving Reese's cups laying around like that, you run a high probability of having a Vic encounter, because I can't get enough of those things. I don't blame those little dudes. I don't.
It was funny because that wasn't the only thing laying out. That was the funny thing. I had a whole tote of like different food items, like beef jerky and all kinds of little snacks and treats. But they chose those peanut butter cups. That was the funny thing. They probably ate one and they were like, "Oh, these are the bomb. I want these ones." We weren't gone very long, but they had eaten almost the whole bag before we came back. And they didn't bother anything else in the tote. They just wanted those peanut butter cups.
Well, I can understand why. Yeah, those things are as addicting as all get out. I understand. Now, you've had another experience, too, with a very unusual couple of creatures. Tell us about that, if you don't mind.
Well, both me and my sister have had encounters with Puckwadjis. And what a Puckwadji is like it's kind of like a little porcupine man. It stands up on its hind legs like a hominid and walks with like hominid legs, but its body looks like a hedgehog or a porcupine, and it has a little like hedgehog face kind of, but with a big, huge, smiling mouth of teeth, sharp teeth. And the one my sister saw, believe it or not, was wearing a derby hat. She was up in Oric. She was having a hot tub at a friend's property, and the hackles on her neck started to stand up, and she just felt everything got silent, like it was in a vacuum. And she turned to the side to look, and she didn't understand what she was seeing at first, a little porcupine looking man with a derby hat walking along down the trail beside the hot tub. And it looked over at her, it hissed, showing its big old mouth of teeth, and then kept walking with this insidious smile on its face. And she just sat there and watched it walk out into the woods, and then promptly got up and went into the house and told her boyfriend what she had just seen. And he explained to her what it was, that it was a Puckwadji, and that he had also seen those. And then I had also seen a Puckwadji right over here in the Valley West area again. There is a group of bushes and trees and shrubbery that borders along the highway 101 over here. And we were over here by this abandoned school, just kind of checking things out at night. And in this small little bush, it has made a little house. It's not a small bush. It's actually a big bush, but it has made a little house out of the inside of it where it stays. And I barely could see it. And I said, "Oh, there's a Puckwadji in there." And we had gotten pizza that night. So I tossed it a couple pieces of pizza because it was kicking an empty tin can. That's how I knew there was something in there. I could hear something kicking a little tin can in there. And I looked in, and there was a Puckwadji in there kicking a tin can. And it looked like maybe it was hungry, So I took a couple of pieces of pizza and I just tossed them in there, and then I just left it be. Because you don't really want to mess with Puckwadjis. They don't trust humans anymore. We broke our bond with them a long time ago. We used to be friends with them back in the old times, 5,000 years ago, but they don't trust us anymore at all. But after I fed it the pizza, it was less aggressive, because sometimes it would come around and kick the cans really heavy and throw stuff around and really make a ruckus trying to scare us away. But after I fed it the pizza, it was like it would only come around and kick the can if it was hungry. So that was cool. I knew when it was hungry, and I would just throw it some food, and then it would go on its merry way. But there's a whole family of Puckwadjis that live back there along and underneath the highway. And there was some people trying to catch it and hunt it a while back, but I think they're like the leprechaun, and they just can't be caught because they can materialize and dematerialize into something else, probably water, since this is a water planet, and water is alive and well, and it has its own thoughts and beings. And I think it's a living thing, water, by itself. And that's why things can turn to water when they're scared or when they need to get away from us, because water can move anywhere it wants with great speed and accuracy. And we can't capture it like that. We can't just grab it. It just flows through our hands. So I think that's why some of the beings out here, like the leprechaun in Costa Rica, change itself into water to escape.
You sure have had some amazing experiences, never a dull moment. And speaking of that, there's one more encounter you had you haven't shared with us yet.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so just recently I had that. Okay, about 4 months ago, we got hired on this job to clear this property for this lady in Neyland that is setting up a doggy daycare style piece. She has a couple acres of property on a piece of land that hasn't been really cleared since in the last 200 years since they first logged it. So there was some virgin forest on this property that had some old growth stump on it that it itself looked like a portal. The bottom of it was open, and the darkness just seemed to absorb all the light within it a few feet into the stump. My friend, he's from Costa Rica, and he started to cut down some of these little trees and shrubs, and some of these coltsfoot were huge, and the berry bushes, it just looked like at a Jurassic Park, this area for property. It looked prehistoric. It was amazing, and I felt so bad having to clear it, a path through it, because it just seemed like it was a good place to hide if you were something like that. And sure enough, as soon as he started cutting a path through there, I started seeing things that I had never seen before, orbs of light and these shadows that were flying around, different shapes. They would move. It was kind of like if you had something in your eye, but it wasn't in my eye. It was in the air above it and above the tree line. In the tree line, all these different shapes and shadow things and light orbs. And my heart and I just got this overwhelming sense of dread, anxiety, sadness, grief. It just hit me like a wall, and I just started crying. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop sobbing. I sobbed uncontrollably for 2 days while we worked on this property. And I just told him, I can't cut that. I will help you clear it, but I cannot, in all good conscience, cut that. These things are telling me that we shouldn't be doing this, that they're afraid. They don't want us here. Why are we doing this? They don't understand. And my friend, he's from Costa Rica. He's very open-minded. He has had a Bigfoot encounter when he was a young boy. and he came face to face with Oma. And ever since then, he's been searching out Bigfoot. We go squatching every once in a while in deep forest areas. But so he understood what I was saying. He couldn't see it and he couldn't feel that, but he understood that I could, and I could see that. And so he allowed me to just clear the brush away as he cut it, and we left offerings for that, whatever it was. Every time we left the property from then on out, be like spirits, fruits, vegetables, nuts, little things like that, to just apologize and offer something in return for having cut a swathing path through their home, their peaceful, beautiful home. And on one of the last days we were there, I was sitting at the bottom of the hill, and I felt something watching me, and I heard something, and I look up the hill and I see something, but I don't know what I'm looking at. And then it starts to move a little bit, and then the other one starts to move a bit, and it was the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. They were green, the same color of green as the trees and bushes around it. Their skin was like leaves. You could see the veins of like leaves, and it was all green skin. You could see their face. It had like a human face, a human head. Their hair was all leaves. It was like leaves coming out, like if you had braided leaves in your hair or something. Their body, the bottom of their body was like a fawn. It was like a deer bottom of their body, and they had hands, and they had two sets of ears. One was a human ear on the side of their head, and they had another ear on the top of their head, like a deer ear. And they were beautiful. They were so beautiful. The man had a small beard that was also leaves, and mustache that was also leaves. And they were just watching us. I think they were communicating to each other, but I couldn't tell what they were saying. Their mouth didn't seem to move very much, and I couldn't really hear, but I could feel them kind of just basically like they were like the overseers of that area, I felt like. And they were just kind of seeing what we were gonna do next. If we were done, if we were, hopefully we weren't gonna, I think they were just seeing if we were gonna come back with a chainsaw, because I had told them already that we were not gonna use the chainsaw anymore because they did not like the chainsaw. Everything in there was just freaking out when we had the chainsaw out. And I can understand why. But it was the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. These green forest people, like, it reminded me of Pan, except they were like half plant, half people, and half fawn. It was just so strange. They had human arms, human hands that looked like, but the bottom half of them was a deer, and the fur on the bottom half of their body was green. Their hooves were green, like a darker green, and their skin, all their chest, their breasts, everything was all green and like with veins like a leaf. They just stood and watched for a moment, and I asked my friend if he could see them, and he was looking up, and he was looking and looking and looking. He's like, I'm not sure what I'm seeing. And then we looked at each other and we were talking, and then we looked back up there, and they had faded back into the forest. I could barely see him at that point. He couldn't see him anymore, but I could barely see him. They just faded back into the bush. Like, you couldn't, the regular human eye could never have known that they were there. They could probably sense that there was something different about the forest, but you could not make them out. They were so camouflaged. It was amazing. They camouflaged so well. And, I couldn't believe I'd seen them. I didn't believe what I was seeing when I was looking at it. I didn't want to believe that I was seeing what I was seeing. But as I was looking at it and just studying everything about them to tell him what I was seeing, I just was making all these mental notes of what the heck was this thing, And I still don't really know what they were, but they are a definite forest being. I think they come from a different dimension too. But it might have been what was throwing the little pebbles at my friend when he was weed whacking.
Holy cow, Sarah. I don't know how you do it. How do you have any kind of normalcy in your life after having all these experiences with these fantastical beings?
What is normal?
Good point.
I mean, I feel like I'm blessed that I'm able to communicate, or I don't know, that they know my heart so well that they are brave enough to show themselves to me. I feel very honored and very humbled, and to the point of tears sometimes.
Well, you're awfully lucky to have these experiences. They've all been positive. Hope that never changes. I really do. And you've got a lot of ancient forests there in Humboldt County, like you said, so who knows what's running around out there?
Yeah, some of these trees are 5,000 years old. We were able to save and secure a small fraction of the old growth forest at Headwaters Grove. So if people want to come visit, that's a really excellent place to experience old growth forest up in Headwaters Grove off of Elk River Road. There you will see 5,000-year-old trees and a virgin forest that has not been touched by man.
Like I said, it's an amazing place. It really is. Well, having said that, it's about time for us to get out of here. But before we do you have any closing comments you want to put out there for us?
Oh, just stay open-minded, stay open-hearted, look at things as an opportunity to grow and learn, and don't be afraid. Go with fear. Life takes bravery. If something shows itself to you, clear your mind and just be in the moment. Don't try to, catch it, or, it's just not, they're not showing itself to you for you to do anything. They just are wanting you to know that they're there. And let's share this space with them. And if you're coming up here, just stay on the path.
Well, like I told you before, I like the way you think about a lot of this. Of course, there are some things about Dogmen that we don't agree on, but that's a healthy thing. It's no big deal at all if we don't agree on everything. So, having said that, I really do hope you never change, because I really do like the way you think. But having said that, thanks again so much for coming on. We really do appreciate your time and hope you have a great night.